The early days of the Old West saw women outnumbered by men to a dramatic degree. Depending on the regional census report, men usually outnumbered women by a ratio of 3 to 1. This was the result of gold rushes in the first half of the 19th century, whose pursuers were almost always male. Rarely did you see women mining or prospecting or scouting the migrating parties venturing westward. In 1850, over 90% of California's burgeoning population constituted men. The reason for this was simple. Religious zealism was alive and well across the United States. Puritan values extended far beyond the Mississippi River in either direction. There were strict expectations held against women, duties assigned as per the generations of gender roles that preceded them. However, it didn't take long before the conservative East gave way to a more liberal West. And nowhere was this more apparent than in the lifestyle changes of Western female transplants. Whether it was in their dress, behavior, or attitudes regarding sex, women were keen on shedding the hysterical fixation society had on what it meant to be a proper woman. In the West, anyone could be who they wanted to be. With this change in attitudes came an influx in nicknames and labels. Daughters of Sin, Doves of the Roost, and Nymphs du Prairie were common monikers heard in America's heartland. The 49ers of California's gold mines called their shady ladies soiled women and painted cats. You might hear a cowboy refer to someone as a scarlet lady or fallen angel. In the end, they were all the same concept: culture-changing women of the West. And one of their favorite abodes? The saloon, and thus the era gave birth to saloon girls. If you were to turn back the clock to the mid-1800s in a moderately populated settlement anywhere east of the Missouri River, you'd be hard-pressed to find a woman in a saloon, pub, bar, or social club where drinks were served. Unless it was a German beer hall with culturally accurate wives and daughters forming a bulk of the waitstaff, ladies were not allowed beyond the doors of such an establishment. That is until you ventured further west, where saloons and dance halls aplenty weren't just known for hodgepodge liquor and walls adorned with buck antlers and bearskin. These establishments weren't afraid to let the ladies of the West make themselves a pretty penny. Not only did it benefit the owners of the place, but it allowed the working women to make a living that didn't involve grueling labor on a farm or dealing with 8 children and a dairy cow. A saloon girl's job, first and foremost, was to entertain the lonely and dreary men of the town they found themselves in, often mining camps and rural settlements. These men, desperate for any morsel of attention or female friendship, could be conversed with, bought a drink, and made to laugh, all before a trip to the dance floor. The cycle would then begin again, rinse and repeat, of course, with a monetary value every step of the way. Saloon girls weren't used to the lavish salary or high wages. Many considered themselves refugees, escaping lesser desired positions at mills where labor laws weren't enforced, or farms where the aforementioned strenuous labor exhausted them into submission. Savvy saloon owners plastered posters all across town, or passed out flyers during busy hours to local commuters. Some establishments offered these working women upwards of $10 a week, plus commission. To maximize profits, if a patron asked the attending lady to share a drink, the bartender would pour 1 shot glass of whiskey and another shot glass of sugar water or tea, depending on the liquor requested. However, the patron would still be charged the price of 2 drinks. Needless to say, saloon girls were quite the vaudeville performers. They fooled the men with faux drunkenness at ease. And not like the male patrons cared much anyway. They were just happy someone of the opposite gender was talking to them in the first place. If the saloon doubled as a dance hall or vice versa, the men might want to share the dance floor with their attending saloon girl. Dancing frequently started around 8 o'clock in the evening. Patrons could pick a waltz, a polka, or any dance style in between. The best of the dance hall girls could see themselves take part in 50 dances in a single shift. Factoring in tips, commission, and salary, this fervent action could make the girl more money than a Western man saw in a month. Dancing would often cost the patron at least 75 cents, if not an entire dollar. For this price, they might see themselves dancing for 15 minutes, but rarely any longer. It was always up to the business owner, but saloon and dance hall girls usually kept 50% of their drink and dance sales. Some establishments offer their saloon girls a token for every dollar spent on the girls' waiting services. Sometimes, this came in the form of an ivory disc, a small coin-like object. These tokens were also made of a simple metal on occasion. As the night wore on, saloon girls would slide these ivory discs into their stockings, leading to quite the lumpy-looking leg as the last call was announced. In certain parts of the West, working ladies could land themselves regulars, repeating patrons who found a connection with a specific saloon girl. In these scenarios, the girl might receive side payments and expensive gifts from their regulars, adding to their lavish lifestyle potential. With the surplus in earnings, saloon girls' first and foremost priority was improving their personal hygiene. It's to no one's surprise that the westward settlements were foul-smelling stinkholes. Deodorant wasn't around until 1888, followed by toothpaste in a tube in 1892. Saloon girls would obviously bathe themselves more than their male patrons, but this was still often a once-a-month ordeal. If they could afford it, these working ladies would go the extra mile and purchase makeup, once a taboo concept for the proper ladies of the East. Calcium salts or carminic acid would be bought to color cheeks and lips, while hair dye of many colors was used to add personal flair. In fact, the term painted lady was born from the vibrancy of saloon girls' appearances. After cleaning and pampering up, the lady's next objective was finding the perfect outfit. Of course, this meant throwing the prudish and ornate styles of Victorian fashion out the window. Instead, saloon girls opted for colorful and flashy petticoats, paired with equally colorful skirts and risque hemlines. If their stockings or garters weren't visible to the naked eye, then it wasn't a saloon girl. However, most of them still kept their dresses at knee or shin length, though even that was considered scandalous by the highbrows. Once the evening revelry began, it was all work and no play for the saloon girls. They'd sell their beverages, encourage refills, and laugh the night away. But rarely did they offer sex. Prostitution was different than saloon girl work, and no matter where the evening activities went, whether it be dancing or inebriated conversation, they and their employers expected the utmost respect from patrons. Owners knew a bulk of their business was the result of a saloon girl's service, and as the years went on, and the working ladies weren't just singles, but mothers and daughters of the everyday citizen, there was no tolerance for perverted or crass behavior by way of the patrons. If a woman was disrespected, the owner would often ban the unruly customer for life. No ifs, ands, or buts. If the action was truly offensive, word would spread like wildfire through town. The patron wouldn't just be kicked out, they'd be dismissed by the entire townsfolk at large, like a black sheep or ugly duckling. In some instances, the offender would be outright killed. The lawless nature of backcountry settlements reigned supreme. Of course, this didn't mean the life of a saloon girl was all peaches and cream. The job was still a dangerous one, especially when outlaws or desperados were involved. If a wandering traveler didn't have any ties to the town they scuffled in, what was it to them that a saloon girl who didn't appreciate their advances was met with violence? Saloon girls were protected, but not immune to death or destruction. Older saloon girls might fall ill, as the aforementioned poor hygiene and unfiltered disease that ran rampant in the West would claim the elderly working ladies as another victim of the times. Or the saloon girl might simply have nowhere else to go and eventually succumb to overdose or suicide. Suicide rates were vastly underreported in the Old West era, if reported at all. Apart from the male ruffians parading through the Western landscape with chicanery and chaos, other women and fellow saloon girls were the workers' biggest adversary. Competition was rife between the walls of saloons and dance halls. It wasn't uncommon to see fellow girls fist-fighting, assaulting, and straight-up shooting one another over wages, gifts, and regulars. The biggest obstacle to a successful career as a saloon girl were the male patrons adamant about making their favorite server or dancer their wife. Many a bartender or owner of the establishment would go to great lengths to ensure that regulars didn't become too regular. They feared a closer romantic relationship would end in marriage. With marriage, it was less likely the saloon girl would stick around, which meant less money in the businessman's bank. If marriage was the most popular reason saloon girls fell out of employment, pregnancy was the second leading cause. While sex work was contained to separate establishments, some saloon girls dabbled in both professions, especially if a saloon or dance hall had a red light district on the second floor of its own building. Pregnancy wasn't just the plight of business owners, but of the saloon girls themselves. In the Old West, medical treatment, and specifically abortions, were rare commodities, and ridding oneself of a pregnancy was a nasty affair. Arsenic, mercury, and vinegar were common substances injected by women to induce an abortion. This was especially true after the Comstock Act of 1873, which made contraceptives and abortions illegal, regardless of the settlement's remoteness. Stillborns and terminated fetuses were not often recorded, and the number of them in the era of the Wild West remains a mystery to this day. This is not to say that all saloon girls who wound up pregnant didn't want the baby or couldn't continue their work. For as many that saw it as a burden, there was an equal number who found a way to raise a child and still get food on the table. Childcare was by no means a popular enterprise on the frontier, but if a woman was connected, and without a doubt the best of the saloon girls were, a child would have a caretaker in some sort of fashion. In the end, the life of a saloon girl was hard work. It came with long nights, lost voices, and lingering anxieties over who might walk through that door on any given shift. But one thing is for certain: it was less dangerous and minus the painstaking manual labor that came with being a ranch hand or stay-at-home mother of a million mouths to feed. They made a good deal of money, and the best ones were better off for it. Like the outlaws, cowboys, and gunslingers of the Old West, saloon girls were of equal importance. Without them, the legacy of the frontier as a whole wouldn't be the same.